Hello, everybody. Welcome along. On Saturday, very, very sadly, the football world lost one of its most beloved figures, Jack Charlton, who died aged 85 after a long battle with, I think, more than one illness from what my reading says. I did a quick 5-minute video and text the man sitting opposite me because we did a similar thing when Norman Hunter died recently, and I think the appetite is there. So I've brought David Diamond on once again, and we're just going to have a look at Jack Charlton's career and hopefully celebrate a bit more because it was quite sad on Saturday. But David is a long-time friend of mine, a colleague on the Blue Monday podcast, brilliant authority on football, especially the 1970s. Although we're going to have to go back a bit further than that today.
Even
welcome,
before
Dave.
my time. Yeah, hello, mate. Yeah, sad news indeed. And I think you touched on there the second one that we've did in recent weeks, really, because we did a little half hour on Norman Hunter as well. And someone tweeted a brilliant tweet. It could actually have been you, Ben. Sorry if it was, but so I think since the turn of the year, I believe Trevor Cherry died since the turn of the year. Apologies if I got that wrong. I believe he did.
He did, yeah.
In respect of Trevor Cherry, Norman Hunter, and Jack Charlton, Leeds have lost something like 3 players with something like 1,500 appearances.
Oh, it'll be yeah,
it's just staggering.
Crazy number.
Absolutely staggering.
So, Dave, let's do this because I mean, the career is basically Leeds as a club guy. Then we've got the England stuff, obviously the small matter of a World Cup winners medal. Then we'll do the managerial stuff. That's a little bit where it is a different story to Norman Hunter. But I just wanted to touch on this, Dave. Born Northumberland, 1935. And I was thinking about this. Bobby Robson, Brian Clough, Jack Charlton. Can you think of three more beloved English football?
Not really. And
characters?
a hotbed of football. And we all know who his brother is. Well, we had another brother that was a pro footballer as well. And also talk about football running in the family. He was a nephew of the Milburns, who all 5 brothers played pro football. The most famous being Jackie Milburn, War Jackie, who was the initial Newcastle United centre forward hero, worship hero, and latter to become not such a great manager at Ipswich Town. But I mean, what a football dynasty that is, for goodness sake. I think this was all, I believe, came from his mother's side. Yeah,
and it's similar kind of outpourings from Clough and Sir Bobby Robson as well, I think. Started at Leeds in 1952, but the first 3 or 4 years of his career stopped by national service, Dave.
Yeah, well, that was it in those days. So he's exactly the same age as my wife's father. Yeah, he's 85 now, and he did his national, missed obviously too young, 1935, same year. Obviously missed the war, and my father-in-law did his national service in the RAF in Egypt or something like that. So yeah, that was it. There was no avoiding that.
Worked his way through the kind of local ranks and into Leeds, and then, as I said, disrupted by national service. Obviously, the figure of Don Revie is going to appear very, very soon, and all-consuming when it comes to Leeds. But from what I've read, Dave, not the most dedicated player at the start of his career. Let his talent get him by, I think.
Well, I think he sort of realised that, and this comes out very much, and he said since. I mean, I think, reading between the lines, not reading between the lines, I think it's fairly well publicised. He ultimately fell out with Bobby, his brother, but yeah, he realised he was much the inferior footballer to the great Bobby Charlton. So yeah, I think reading between the lines back then, I don't think he really did take it that seriously, or perhaps even thought that it would end up as a career. I believe I read somewhere he was obviously being 6 foot, whatever he was, 6'4" or whatever, 6'5". I believe he's on the cusp of when he joined Leeds, of joining the police.
But Dave, 1961, Don Revie is going to take over Leeds United, and we went through a lot of this craziness and the success that's going to come when we talked about Norman Hunter. But apparently there was, so to speak, a come to Jesus meeting. I think Revie actually tried him up front as well.
Well, there's a story even pre-Revie. I believe he initially played up front because he was the great John Charles, who's now one of the first greats of football back then in the 50s. Was playing centre back, and then this is pre-Revie. Someone thought, well, hang on, 6'5", he's not really got the touch perhaps to play up front or the attributes to play up front, but make a great centre half. And then they switched. So John Charles, funny enough, just before we came on air, we went through Leeds' all-time goal scorers, and that will come out in a bit. But John Charles is quite well up the list, as you would imagine in that. But he started off as a centre half. Jack Charlton was up front, and then they basically swapped roles.
There's a nice bit of symmetry here, Dave, considering Leeds have pretty much just got themselves promoted at Swansea yesterday. And there's this legendary game in 1962 at Swansea where Revie is just basically, look, I'm going to put all the youngsters in. And Jack Charlton is basically the one who's going to mentor through. And Gary Sprake has played one game at this point, but Norman Hunter, aged 18, Paul Rainey, aged 18, Rod Johnson, aged 17, all make their debut in the same game with Jack Charlton is basically going to chaperone these guys through the game. And particularly in the case of Hunter, Charlton, Rainey, and Sprake as well, these guys are going to be the back four in the defence for about 10 years.
No, yeah, absolutely. Rod, I must confess, I also saw that, and I'd never heard of Rod Johnson before. I'd be interested to know what came of him, and how many appearances he actually made. But I'd never actually heard of him. Obviously, in latter years, Leeds had the great Terry Cooper playing left back. But you're right. That the Sprake, Rainey, Charlton, Hunter was the bedrock, and then obviously following on from them, Bremner comes through the youth system. Obviously, Johnny Giles comes ultimately from Man United. So Lorimer comes through. It's just ridiculous, absolutely crazy.
So Giles arrives that same season, and they win the second division title in 1963-64. But before success at Leeds, Dave, we've got to talk about England, because we get up to 1965 and Bobby Charlton, he's won a second division title at this point. He hasn't really won anything with Leeds. He's 30, but Alf Ramsey is going to make him the stopper to Bobby Moore's silky, silky centre half. He's going to become the partner there. Yeah. I think up till then, Jimmy Armfield may well have been playing, or he could have been fullback. I think centre back. I think something like that. But I think Sir Alf could see enough in Jack Charlton that he was an out and out thou shalt not pass type defender, which obviously would sit perfectly in the team alongside the ever cultured Bobby Moore. So Leeds are in the top division, established England international, and we get the summer of 1966. Dave, take us through this.
Yeah, I believe he made his debut the season before against, as you said, nearly 30, touching 30 against, it could have even been Scotland, maybe even in a Scotland game, not sure. Certainly plays in the home internationals against Scotland. Keeps his place right through that period till the 66 and the pre World Cup games in 66, where this back four of goalkeeper as well, Gordon Banks, Cohen on the right, Wilson on the left, Moore and Charlton, becomes settled and a real cohesive unit, and he plays every minute of the World Cup.
World Cup winners medal into the collection, which is going to get bigger. He's quite funny when you hear him interviewed in later years. Oh yeah, I won everything.
Well, he didn't. What's sort of funny? It's the famous, almost the famous. It is the famous quote between the two brothers at the end of the game, almost saying, well, that's it. What do we do now? You know, what more is there to achieve? Well, there isn't, is there? The ultimate, done it. And you know, yeah.
That's not strictly true, though,
Well,
Dave,
no,
is it?
but
Because 1967, Jack Charlton wins Footballer of the Year, with Bobby Charlton having been Footballer of the Year
amazing.
the year prior.
Should you say this is the football writers? So this is before it does the actual players. The PFA award doesn't come to. Well, I think Hunter's the inaugural winner in 1974. So this is the football writers. Voting for the player of the year then.
And Revy's Leeds are going to start winning stuff now, Dave. And we touched on this when we talked about Norman Hunter, which you can find on the channel.
It's just ridiculous.
They won a lot, but they also finished second and runners-up a lot, didn't they?
But not runners-up by a distant mile. I mean, I think 3 times they lost, or certainly twice or 3 times they lost the lead by a point. I mean, it's just what these guys could have won is just mind-boggling.
Incredible. So in 1968, he wins the League Cup and the Fairs Cup, UEFA Cup, with Leeds. In the squad for Euro 68, but not selected. However, 1968-69, Leeds United are champions of England. And in 1970, when you think, Dave, he's coming up 35 now, in the squad for World Cup 1970, 1 appearance, and by all accounts, retired himself on the plane on the way home, from what I hear.
Yeah, I think so. I think Ramsey went with the Everton centre-back Brian LeBone, playing alongside Bobby Moore back in 1970. So I think he played against. It's either one of the group games, Czech. I think it was Czech or Romania. One of the group
Czech
games.
Republic, yeah.
Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia as they were then, which I think 1-0. I think England won. So 35. Great. Played a game. Played a game at the World Cup. Great way. Retire at the top. Obviously, certainly from international football.
Another European trophy in 71, an FA Cup in 72, kind of completes the world and European.
And again, all the runners-up, FA Cup runners-up in 1970 against Chelsea, scored in the final at Wembley in the first game in the 2-2 draw. I mean, what a career.
So he finishes in 1973. Obviously, he's 38 at this point. Just describe him as a player, Dave. What type of player was he? And talk a little bit about the goal, because we're Ipswich fans. Talk a little bit about the goal he scored at Portman Road as well.
I was there that day, 2-2 draw.
What year was that, Dave?
72-73. So
nice finish.
Autumn 72. Incredible, great finish. What a finish. Sort of 1-2s, continues his run and sort of like almost half volleys. As a ball drops, half volleys. Corner, yeah. Great finish. That was very. I'd wager some Leeds fan will shoot me down. I should imagine he didn't score many better goals than that, and I'd imagine in the box, 90% of his goals must have been scored with his head, obviously. And he was really the first, and Revy was the first to really see the benefit of 6'5" Jack Charlton standing on the goal in front of the goalkeeper on the goalkeeper's toes for a corner. So as a footballer, uncompromising, resolute. As I said before, thou shalt not pass. And I'm sure again Leeds fans would back me up on this. Not in the same. Not class is wrong because they're horses for courses, but not as cultured as Norman Hunter, who had a velvet left foot. But yeah, just a great dependable centre back who played, as we know, 700 plus games for Leeds, but also chipped in with a fair few goals.
Yeah, as well. The 9th all-time Leeds top scorer apparently, which given some of the attacking players Leeds have had. Yeah. Dave, just talk to me about 3 comparisons. Talk to me about the partnership with Hunter as opposed to the partnership with Bobby Moore, and just talk about the comparisons and the relationship with the brother that to some people would have destroyed them, but they just seemed like the perfect brotherhood, didn't they?
Well, I think he accepted it. As I've said before, he accepted that he just didn't have half the talent that Bobby Charlton did, who I have heard Jack Charlton say before, he's the best he's ever seen, best he's ever played for. Probably not an exaggeration. So I think from a brotherly point of view, there was never that. I always thought Jack Charlton perhaps saw his England career as something that he didn't think would happen, and almost as a bonus, if you know what I mean. And certainly, no, he held his brother in such high esteem. As I said, I don't think there was ever any friction there. That's a good analogy. I mean, Norman Hunter versus Bobby Moore. I mean, Bobby Moore, just a complete centre back. Incredible reader of the game, 2-footed, silky. Norman Hunter. Similar, like I said, Norman Hunter could play. Wouldn't put Norman Hunter obviously in the same class as Bobby Moore. So perhaps, perhaps at Leeds, Jack Charlton could perhaps, play a little bit more. But obviously with England, he'd just give the ball, to Bobby Moore, or give the ball into midfield and miss midfield out, altogether really.
So the kind of footballing philosophy of this idea that Bobby Charlton can play football, but Jack Charlton knows how to stop you playing football, is going to go into the managerial realm that he's now going to have a long managerial career with. So, but just to finish that, so for Leeds, they're all the way through from national service right the way through the Revie era.
20 years, and it's 20 years.
Everything, one club guy, just incredible career, and pretty much the constant people arrived, people joined that team, but he and Revie were there, and Bremner actually were there from the beginning, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, he retired. He basically retired. Revie had lined up. He may have even been at the club already. Called him McQueen.
Okay. So on we go to this managerial career, and it's like I say, it's very much. Well, you and I supported a team managed by Mick McCarthy, who seemed to have learned absolutely everything from Jack Charlton. So he starts at Middlesbrough on some strange deal where he wouldn't sign a contract, and he had some wage, and he basically took over the club lock, stock, and won the second division with moving Graham Souness into central midfield at his first go, Dave.
Yeah, well, I guess so. I mean, not only won the second division, won it by 15 points. So, I mean, fairly...
2 points per game for a win as well, yeah?
Fairly dominant, fairly conclusive, yeah. And not surprising, he was manager of the year. And, Souness had moved from Tottenham. I think he certainly came through the Tottenham youth system. I think he was... a bit of a bad lad, a bit of a black sheep at Tottenham by all accounts, and obviously what a move for Souness, going to Middlesbrough, just the sort of guy who he needed, Jack Charlton, to keep him on the straight and narrow, and he obviously flourished under Charlton and was the bedrock of that Middlesbrough side when they got promoted for Liverpool 77, 78, so for 2 or 3 seasons after they got promoted.
He goes to Sheffield Wednesday in 77, and from what my reading tells me, they were a bit lower down, and I think they were expecting him to kind of drag them up in a similar way.
Yeah, I mean, what we just should touch on, in his first season in the first division, 74-75, they finished 7th. So I mean, that's a measure of just how far he took them. Yeah, Sheffield Wednesday, a bit of an odd one, and again, looking at that. I think he had a sort of similar. I believe he sort of had some sort of similar deal there as well, contract-wise.
On we go. He goes back for a short caretaker run back at Middlesbrough and saves them from relegation. And then he's made Newcastle United boss in 1904. I think, from what I can ascertain, just after Keegan had finished as a player and just before Waddle, Gascoigne and Beardsley all...
Yeah, I think Waddle and Beardsley perhaps was certainly there, I think, just on the cusp, certainly just prior to Gascoigne. And again, I think it was his uncle Jackie Milburn that persuaded him to take the job. Because I think first of all, he was he's fairly didn't really want to take it.
But we're going to get the match made in heaven, Dave, in 1986. Why was this job so perfect for him, and why was he so beloved by the Irish as Republic of Ireland?
His ways, and it's just his ways, demeanour,
charisma.
His character, everything just fitted in brilliant. Almost that us against the world type scenario. Absolutely loved him, didn't they? Absolutely, yeah. You're right, a brilliant fit. And don't forget, he took over. There was some decent players there, although they just lost Mark Lawrence and had just retired. Brady by that time was struggling, probably the best of Brady by then. But he did inherit some pretty decent players, to be fair.
And from what I've seen, just watching a few people talking, Kevin Moran and Johnny Giles and Mick McCarthy, I've heard interviewed. Actually, socio-politically as well for Ireland, I think a lot of people value, what he brought to the country in terms of, how the Irish were perceived. And I'm not an expert on it, but he's certainly regarded as more than a manager. Very cleverly, he's going to start exploiting the granny rule. So this is when the rule changes, whereby if you're a second generation away and managed to build a very, very good Ireland team, but and Dave, as England fans, we know that we could just never beat Ireland while Jack Charlton was manager there. So Euro '88, which is remembered as Van Basten's tournament, and it's a victory, Dave, against England with Ray Houghton scoring the goal in the first game.
I look back at that and I remember the '88 side and the squad, and you just think, how ever did we manage to just be so bad? But yeah, he was. Tactically very good. It was the press all over the pitch and get the ball forward and feed off the second ball, which was ironic because he had some talented players there, but it worked. It was just effective.
Ronnie Whelan scores against the Soviets for a draw in the second game, and they do lose to Hullet, Rijkaard and Van Basten's and Arnold Meurens, indeed. Netherlands. There was only two groups there, Dave, and the Soviets and the Netherlands end up contesting the final as well, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, remembered for the great Van Basten goal. Still probably up there as one of the greatest goals ever scored, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So physics.
On we go to World Cup '90, which is where I really sort of fall in love with football, and it's just sensational, isn't it? And again, it's England in the group, and we couldn't beat them, Dave. And I know Brian Robson's going to get injured, but this is an England team. I wrote down the midfield is Gascoigne and Robson with Waddle and Barnes either side and Lineker and Beardsley up front. The point I'm making is that just a little bit. The point I'm making is that he knew how to stop teams, and Mick McCarthy did a great interview where he said the instructions were just very, very clear, and he'd had Peter Beardsley at Newcastle, and he said, right, when Peter Beardsley gets the ball, press him, and then he'll have to change direction, because if you don't allow him to change direction, so Mick McCarthy goes out on the pitch, does exactly that, and Peter Beardsley doesn't do anything in the game. And brilliant. I think that was the detail and the tactics. In that World Cup, Dave, 0-0 against Egypt, and then 1-1 against the Netherlands, and strangely tight group, but exactly the sort of group that Charlton would have relished as a manager, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, done the job. I remember that the last game, the 1-1 draw with Holland was not a nice game. Not a nice game. I seem to remember, because obviously three were going through. It was that wasn't the most pleasant of games. But look, it done the hard work. The crucial point there was obviously England. No doubt would have been disappointed not to beat Egypt, for goodness sake. I mean, we only beat them 1-0, but probably disappointed with that. But yeah, just they did the hard yards, and like I said, that was not a nice game, that last game against Holland.
I think the whole tournament is remembered as being, the last one with the back pass rule, and
that's right,
remembered as quite. I know Euro '92 did, but as quite sort of try not to lose rather than win.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, Dave, we get the famous audience with the Pope and ultimately defeat against host nation Italy.
Yeah. 500,000 people welcomed them back off the plane in Dublin. It's just, So by this time, he was an absolute national hero, wasn't he?
National treasure. Euro '92, again, England couldn't beat them, but they did pip them to qualification. Gary Lineker with a late equaliser against Poland in the last game, and despite finishing second in the group, they did not qualify, but they did qualify, Dave, for World Cup USA '94, including a game in the Giants Stadium in New York, which apparently, other than Dublin, is where there's the most Irish people on the entire planet, and they win the game in front of a worldwide audience again with Ray Houghton scoring the goal.
It's the one where he does his little forward roll celebration.
Terry Phelan looks like he's going to strangle him or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I mean, this was also the tournament where he has the spat with the fourth official, doesn't he? Or the linesman, or maybe the ref. I can't remember. He's trying to get his sub on, and he absolutely.
It's John Aldridge, isn't it?
Loses his shit, doesn't he? Yeah.
Incredible. So yeah, they lose to Mexico, and then it's Charlton versus Egil Olsen, which is, a very pragmatic battle, isn't it? All teams tied on 4 points there. Norway, Mexico, Ireland, and Italy. And as the best third place team, they qualify through. Only time in history in the World Cup where all 4 teams have the same points and the same goal difference. Yeah. So it's classic Jack Charlton that he would get through that group. But in some foreshadowing for how his career is going to end, he comes up against Dennis Bergkamp's Holland side, and I might even be able to do a Barry Davis in there. So, Pat Bonner.
Yeah, Packy Bonner. What is he doing? Yeah. Could have thrown his cap on it, couldn't he? Yeah.
But incredible again to get that Ireland team so deep, qualified and through, and it was his protege, Mr. McCarthy, is the only one to get them anywhere close since Euro '96. Then some weird convoluted way of trying to take out one of the runners-up meant they finished second in their group behind Portugal, and the runners-up are put in this odd league table where the bottom 2.
I'm not even sure I remember this.
Yeah, the bottom 2 are then going to play off, and it's a playoff at Anfield, and a very classy young Patrick Cliver.
I do remember. Sorry, couple, doesn't he?
Yeah,
I do remember that. I remember. I think going into that tournament, he had some bad luck. They had some injuries, big injuries. I think Roy Keane going into the qualification, Townsend, John Sheridan. I think they were all really struggling with injuries. So yeah, I think that was very much a factor. And he obviously after that he sort of bows out basically, and it bows out in a good way. Basically saying his older players had reached the point where I think he said they'd given all they could possibly give, could give no more, and it was the right time sort of for him to bow out really.
And we see him on the TV, and this charismatic fella, famous in adverts for going fishing, and
I love his fishing. Loved his fishing. Yeah,
and we've seen a lot of tweets of people posting pictures in the local Tesco's where he would be wearing his flat cap, and this World Cup winner would just stop. Ordinary man.
And also, OBE in 1974, and I think Ireland's highest accolade, which is hardly ever awarded. He was awarded an honorary citizenship. So he was Irish at the end. He was English and Irish, an honorary citizenship, which it's just unknown, unheard of. Yeah,
incredible.
And a sad thing, which now means also that over half the '66 World Cup side have now passed. So I think it leaves.
Who's remaining now, Dave?
It leaves George Cohen, Nobby Stiles, Bobby Charlton, Jeff Hurst, and Roger Hunt. That's it.
Wow, incredible, incredible. And very sadly, and as I know only too well, sadly in my personal life, I think lymphonia, is that the name of it, and dementia.
I think he had Alzheimer's. Yeah, and certainly cancer. So no, not good. But yeah, a great football man, I think you'd say. A bit like very Bobby Robson. Okay, he didn't have the global. Yeah, he had the international career, but not the perhaps a European management career of Bobby Robson. But as you quite correctly touched on at the start, sort of hewn from the same quarry, both of them. You know what I mean? From that Northumberland bedrock of football. I mean, and you say you read the Bobby Robson book, you read perhaps even Clough to a degree, Jack Charlton as well. If you didn't become a footballer, okay, sort of him, going in the police force, but you'd be down the mines. That's what you did, mines or football.
But definitely, Dave, in that bracket, in terms of the reaction I've seen over the last few days with Bobby and with Brian Clough, incredible player, won everything, great manager at international level as well. and like you just say, charismatic, beloved, and a football giant. So that is our little look back at the career of Jack Charlton, and it got me a little bit because I just remember the first time when I really got into football was World Cup Italia.
Yeah,
Italian night, and I remember him being a huge character.
Exactly your age. So I'm 20 plus years older than you, so that would correspond. So you were 8, 9, 1990. So yeah, 1970 probably was the first sort of World Cup I can sort of remember.
No, yeah. Right. So Bobby, dearie me, Jack Charlton, excuse me, who died this past weekend, aged 85, a great player and a great manager, but more importantly, just a football giant and a great character who we all loved. Please get your thoughts in the comments, your memories. Apologies if we misremembered anything or got any statistics wrong. I know the YouTube comments can be very unforgiving for things like that, but I hope you can see our intention is to pay tribute to a great football character as well. You can follow Dave on Twitter at David Diamond 3. Absolute font of knowledge. Obviously, most work I do with Dave is Ipswich Town based, but if you start talking to Dave about 70s football, he will.
Bore you senseless. Absolutely bore you senseless.
He will talk back. Obviously, as ever, hit subscribe, ring the bell, but more importantly, get your comments in on the great Jack Charlton and his career and what it meant to you. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thanks, Ben.